feels uncomfortable, you can maybe go to the side so that you're out of view of the camera. If everything's okay, we'll get started. Okay, so I'm Emma Pickering. I'm from Nadeen School. I'm the head of learning innovation over there. So I work with children this big from the TOOS program that we have right through to secondary, and I work closely with Casey, who's our head of early years. And we have been doing a trial of Browzly. So we're here today to really share our experiences of that trial of Browzly that we've been doing. And Browzly is an AI-adapted tool for supporting the development of reading, the development of phonics, and the development of early reading. But also it is a very valuable tool for reading intervention for older children or EAL children. So it's not just for early childhood. This could be a tool that can be used throughout school with older children if needed, if there's intervention for EAL or if there's intervention for inclusion needs and various different needs that we know occur in our schools. So we're just going to talk you through what this has looked like in practice as we've been developing it in our school, along with the support of our staff. Okay? So a little bit about just a little bit about Nadeen first of all. So Nadeen School started off as a very small campus in Manama in Cray, and a couple of years ago only had about 250 learners. We moved into a new campus. We now have 850 learners and we're still growing. So our growth in the last 2 years has been quite phenomenal. But what we've really worked extremely hard on is keeping that ethos of the old campus, that small campus, that homely feel on the new campus. So we're working really hard to make sure our learners still feel like that's their space, that they lead the learning in our space. So we've got a really short video from some of our amazing learner leaders at Nadeen.
As a learner leader, who's going to help kids by this? It was amazing. It was about HPR.
A couple of weeks ago, me and a couple of other students went to the Eco Summit at Browzly School. It was a great event. It was really good because we were able to grasp lots of new ideas for our WonderWorks labs. Me and the learners came up with a new long-term project called Waste to Wonders to take old fabrics and make it into new textiles.
I really appreciated the opportunity I got to be the professional teachers development. And I got to share my family grow betters where I'll be able to implement new processes across the school to become more sustainable. And these kinds of opportunities really help to learn how to be a high-performance learner.
It was hard to add the VAAs and ACPs at the beginning for my Wolfpack painting, but once I started, it came out well.
Okay, so that's a group of our learner leaders. So one of the things that we really focus on at Nadeen School is learner leadership, learner voice within the curriculum. So all of these learners are developing their own projects at the moment. So for example, Jessica has designed this wolf pack because our mascot at Nadeen is a wolf. So she's designed this wolf pack based on high performance learning because we're also a high performance learning school. And she's taken each of the ACPs and VAAs from high performance learning and she's designed a wolf to match each one of those. And it's just really representative of how we want our learners to be part of that curriculum development at Nadeen. For example, Hashem, he has just developed a project called From Waste to Wonders, and we've given him space within our WonderWorks lab where he can develop that project and really roll with that project. So we try to put those supports in place to ensure that when a learner has an idea for something, that we really go with that idea and support them through from start to finish. And he has big plans with one of his other learner leader friends, one of his peers. They're going to set up a shop and they're going to use that to generate money for one of our local charities, which is BARC, which is a rescue dog centre. So our learners have big ideas, and one of the things we work really hard to is to nurture those big ideas. Another learner in year 10, she's developing a project called Grow Getters, and it's about composting, growing, and she's developing a curriculum for our Thrive learners, which are our learners with more complex needs, And they will not go on to do IGCSE, for example, they'll go on to do the ASDAN, and she's part of that development of the project. So she's developing a curriculum where they can actually grow things, they can make food from those produce, so developing their life skills basically. She's actually doing curriculum development at age 15. So we're really proud of our learners at Nadeen, we're proud of our campus, and we're proud of what we've achieved in those first 2 years of being there. But now over to talking about Browzly.
So a lot of what we do here is that autonomy in children, and that the learner leaders and things like that that autonomy is given to the children. So where we come from that is from the very start in the early years with our littlest of learners. And what we do really, really appreciate for our learners is that independence, that autonomy. So when we were approached by BSME about this program, it did fit into very much our vision and mission of what we do at school. It was an independent app that could be used for children to access phonics and access their reading. And for us that really complements what we do. So Browzly is an application that you can use in real time for phonics alongside your scheme of work. It's not a scheme of work itself. To supplement and enhance our phonics within the classroom. It's been a really, really fun journey for us to do so far, and we've only begun really to kind of dive into it. And we've been working really closely with the Browzly members of the team to really make it what educators want and what the children need as well. And I think our visions very much align in that, which is very fantastic for what we all kind of want for our little learners. Along the journey, we're given CPD along the way to really get the educators and the practitioners on board with the understanding of what Browzly is and what Browzly can do. It's not just an app where children can read and access. There's a lot of data behind it, which we'll come into in a little bit. And it gives a lot of evidence and a lot of measured statistics and research behind it as well. So along the way, we start with a baseline, as we normally do, to see where the children are at. Along the way, that is a very guided session. The children access it here. You'll see a lot of photos of my small ones accessing the app, and along the way they've gotten really independent with it. It's not something we use all the time, iPads, it's something that we used on sporadic occasions. This is something that they started accessing more regularly and became very, very independent with it. Throughout the sessions, as we do our baseline, we then focus more on the adapted and specific for each learner, so it gives them more of a guided and scaffolded, more specific for each child. And along the way, they're able to do their reading, their reading sentences and reading words, all through talking to Browzly. As you do with any new platform, you find some challenges and you find the benefits. And we actually find it quite hard to really go into just the challenge itself without finding benefits in it as well. Along the way, we found that at the start, our learners were a little bit self-conscious. Reading aloud within groups, and this became more of a positive that when Browzly was there, they were using it independently. They felt in a safe space that they weren't judged by their peers around them. They didn't feel like if they were getting it wrong, someone else might look at them, or there might be another person around there going, no, that's not right. It's a really safe space. The iPad, Browzly is there to really boost their confidence, let them know they're doing a really good job, and help them with their journey there. Another one was in busy classrooms, we might not be able to give every child personalised feedback. In the early years, we do a lot of observation. We know the children very well through and through. In part of our provision is what we do is we know the children. This gave us the data to back that really, really well. We had the evidence, we had sound specific to each phoneme and grapheme of each one, and we could hear it back as data as part of that. And another question was families not being able to support at home due to language barriers. That's not an issue because it's between the child and Browzly, and that way parents could see that it was more of a gamified version. There's a fun way of interacting, and the families didn't need to help because it's unprompted. It's supposed to be for the children to access independently. and this gave them more access to have fun with it. What we did find was definitely more benefits. We found that it supported differentiated learning. Each child in the class, they were on a different journey, and they were able to see that each child had a different area of the phonics scheme to work on. We were able to do it in groups, we were able to do it independently, but they had their own journey, and that was fine for their, as they logged on for their own account. Accent bias. That was a huge help. I know personally in experience, you might not realise, but I am Scottish, and I find it sometimes very difficult to teach an oo sound because it comes out very difficult, very different. So when we have those accent bias, it does differentiate a little bit. However, with Browzly, it takes it into consideration. It takes into the different accents of English in there, so it represents that absolutely perfectly. The fluency with voice AI, because children were able to do it independently, they were able to just have time to read and practice it unprompted, independently, and be more an accurate description of what they could do. And obviously it encouraged the independence and the confident learners. I think that's one thing that shone through this entire experience. Our children are now very independent, very eager to take the iPad to access it themselves. And continues their love of reading. I think we were able to see who really exposed to more of that love of reading for our children. We had some children accessing it more independently, some children asked to use it, and some children we sort of supported them along the way. So as we were saying, it's backed our research, and for us specifically at Nadeen, we use the little Wandle scheme, which does also very much align with Browzly's theory as well, with the research behind it. With spaced repetition, it is very much, you have to give consistent but incremental learning and practice for it to be really embedded in the children's learning. So with that, it fell really in line with, we learn 4 sounds a week, and then on the 5th day, we rehearse, we review, and we consolidate. With Browzly, it does the same thing with making sure it's permanent memory with children's learning.
And I think just before we move on from that slide, just something that's important to add is we use Little Wandle, but Browzly can be synced with other phonics schemes, so it's not exclusive to schools that are using Little Wandle. If you're using Read Write Ink, for example, you can also access Browzly. If you want different fonts, for example, within, if you've got a specific font type that you're using for your flashcards and things like that, when you're teaching phonics, you can actually have that loaded and enhanced. Sorry, I'm recovering from a sore throat. Loaded and enhanced in Browzly. So there are lots of different features within Browzly that can support the way that you work in your school. So it's not just a one-way system. And if you communicate with partner, she's very much able to think of ways of how the system can be adapted to support your school and support the different ways and different strategies, the different schemes, the different handwriting schemes and things like that that you're using to make sure that it's really quite personalised and supportive of what you're doing in your school. So we were really happy when we heard that it was supported with Little Wandle because we introduced Little Wandle in 2023. So it was a new phonics scheme for the school when we moved on to the new campus, and we were wowed by it. It was the best phonics results I'd seen at the end of the school year, particularly for our boys, and it has really enhanced our writing into Key Stage 1 this year, so our Year 1 learners are doing really well. So I was like, right, we're done, we're sold, this is amazing. And then when I met Barbara at a conference back in November, I was like, oh, we can enhance this even more. There's something else that we could be doing to even strengthen what we're doing already. So I think we have these complete phonics programs in our schools. We work with them in different ways. At Nadeen, we very much work with our phonics program in a continuous provision way. So for example, we'll do a very small, Little Wandle is a very small piece of input each day, but then you have everything out in provision. Practice and rehearse. That spaced repetition, we have that out and available in our provision for our learners. And then this is just an extra thing. This is an extra enhancement of of that. And at first it was like, oh yeah, this is going to be great, it's an extra enhancement, but what we found underneath the surface of Browzly is actually really exciting and is actually really supporting how we really personalise and like individualise learning for our young children. So yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about some of the surprises that we had with it. Okay, so, sorry, I'm going to have to...
Do you need some water?
I'm really sorry about this today. Okay, so in early years, we're always focusing on our data sources. We have multiple different ways that we're collecting data. And I think our biggest surprise with Browzly has been around the data and these kind of anomalies that we've found in the data and how we've actually used those to our advantage. Okay, so in early years, we tend to do a lot of observing. We've been trained to be observers. We're told that we capture our data, we do observations, we trust ourselves, we trust those observations, we've been trained to trust ourselves. Okay? So a lot of what happens in early years is through that observation. You can see here a group of my learners from last year when I was actually doing some reception teaching. They're playing schools. So they've taken the little wonder resources from the lesson and they're playing schools. And I'm really confident, I'm like, right, okay, I'm watching them. And like, yes, they've got it, they know that first answer because I've seen them playing schools with it. But then you have to question, is that accurate? Am I absolutely certain that I know that all of those children know those sounds? Or is it just this learner that knows those sounds? Because he's actually leading that. Okay? So we have to question our observations, and I think what Browzly has given us is it's given us that questioning. It's given us something that we didn't have before. And then obviously you've got your assessments that you do. So Little Wandle, it has very structured assessments, like I'm sure your phonics programs have really structured assessments as well. That gives our summative data at the end of every half term. Right, we know where our learners are, we know what they need next, we know our intervention groups, we know who needs an early intervention for the first sound set, who's not blending. Okay, we know what we're doing, we know how we're rolling into our next term. Okay, so we've done our summative, we've done loads of formative, we trust our data, we're ready to roll into next term. But then we found Browzly. And I think, just want to move on to the next slide. I think one of the most interesting things for me has been the data. There is so much data being collated in the back of Browzly. So you see the learner doing their little assessment, they're reading their words or they're saying their sound and then moving on. But this is what's happening in the background of Browzly. So you can look at group data, you can look for patterns, you can track who's on track, who's not on track, which groups of learners are not maybe picking things up. And this is real-time data. This is had no teacher prompting. You know, we do this, we nod, don't we? We're like, you can do it. And we nod, we move our mouths. We accidentally do these things even when we're administering an assessment because we just want our learners to do well. We want our little people to be confident and we want them to do well. And accidentally, you know, you catch yourself doing this and then you put your hand behind your back again because you're like, oh, I've just prompted them. So how accurate are those summative assessments that we do through our little wandle? And this has thrown up some real surprises for us that maybe we're not as accurate as we think we are. Okay? So you've got your group data, you've got a real depth of information. Which learners are doing really well with their intonation, their prosody? Which learners are strong in that? Which learners are really not doing well with that? Which learners need some support in order to read with more intonation in their voices? How many of our learners are really fluent? Which learners aren't fluent? Okay? What's their accuracy like? How many words are they getting accurate? And how much are they completing from a text? So for example, when they do little passages, maybe a learner stops before they are able to complete. Now if you were reading with that learner, you'd be continually prompting them to keep going. But what can they do on their own? What's their completeness when they're just sat all alone by themselves with a little Browzly Bear and talking to Browzly Bear? So this is a real accurate assessment of what a learner can do at a given point in time without any teacher prompting, without any teacher intervention. Browzly doesn't prompt, he doesn't put his hands up, he doesn't move his mouth, he doesn't nod his head. Browzly's just there in the background, collating this data and ensuring that it's a really clean and accurate assessment of what a learner can do. And it gives feedback, okay? So I just want you to take a moment to pause and think about the feedback that a learner is getting at the end of doing a little reading task with Browzly. They get from this feedback, they get some positive voice, practice makes perfect, and they get a list of what they need to practice. I want you to just think on your table for a few minutes, based on the discussion that we just had with Leo in the main theatre this morning. I want you to think about metacognition. How is Browzly supporting a learner's metacognition? Okay? Have a go at having this discussion for a couple of minutes on your table. There was loads of discussion. So some of the things that we talked about on the tables when I was moving around was just that idea that they're getting this word is fed back to them. So it's got that gap analysis, it's identifying for a learner what their gaps are, and it's giving them some feedback on what those gaps are. What we talked about over here was maybe if they can tap each word
Yes.
and hear it.
Yes.
That's built in.
Yes.
So
They can tap and listen back.
So they can listen back, they can play back and understand exactly where their gaps are before their next attempt at Browzly. One of the questions over here was then what happens with this? So what I was explaining, when they go into their next session, there will be practice and review of the things that they were challenged by, as well as some new material. So it's continually using AI to adapt to the learner, to build in the things they're challenged by, and build in the next steps. So it's continually doing that. So when a different learner picks it up for them, it's different to another learner in the class, for example. So they have a little QR code that they scan for themselves. So each learner has their own QR code that they can scan for themselves, so it always picks up where they left off. So you have to be careful that they're not scanning someone else's QR code, obviously, so it does require some monitoring. That is another one of the challenges that you could face. But if you teach the learners really carefully, it's that pre-input, isn't it, of how to use a new system in the classroom. So you do that pre-input of how to use the system, that they scan their QR code, they find their little picture of themselves with their QR code, they scan, and off they go. So I think in terms of personalised learning and personalised metacognition, this is just a really useful tool for us.
Just to kind of show you how they access it here. So this is their little code that they take a picture of, and just click on the QR code themselves. We had a great discussion on our current application is in a reception class. We're piloting it within reception, so obviously some younger learners, but we had a fantastic discussion about what happens with older learners and how that can be applied. For us, we are an inclusive school, so we do have our own Thrive department as well. We're looking at ways that can be applied in certain situations there, where they're accessing the earliest curriculum. Or within older children, if you have, as international schools, if you have EAL learners that aren't quite speaking any English yet, this would be something with non-judgmental in their classroom. Go have a safe space outside, access a little game where you're preempting and learning those phonics in a really fun and interactive way.
Thank you. And you can see here, I know it's a little bit difficult to view over there, but there's so much data in the background for you to look at and analyse. I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to have so much data for phonics. Like I said, it's usually being data where it's maybe a little bit questionable, that observation data, even when you're doing your whole group teaching, you're watching their little mouths moving, and you think, yeah, they've definitely got it, everybody's got that sound. But actually, they're looking at each other, they're looking at you for cues, so it's not really an accurate assessment. Whereas with this, you can really see in the quadrant graph who's falling behind and what are they falling behind with. So it's not just who's falling behind, it's what are they falling behind with. So we get this really rich information that can help us to plan our groupings, plan our intervention, plan our next steps, give some feedback to parents about what they can do at home, but it's very, very specific. So we're getting this very clear and specific information. We're finding out what a learner's practice words are, so we know each learner's individual set of practice words. So we say, oh, we're going to send those some extra practice of that whole. Or we're going to, in the morning when they arrive, they're going to go with my assistant teacher and they're going to go and do their practice words. But it's so specific to them. Whereas normally your interventions would generally be, oh, that group are working on that set of sounds, that group are working on those tricky words. Whereas with this, it's actually very, very clear and very, very specific what each learner is working on, so it can be very, very personalised to them. When they've read a little passage, you get all of this detailed information about how they've done with that passage. So how much did they complete out of the number of words? How long did it take them? So you can actually find out how long it took a learner to read a small passage, which I've never really had that information before. I've never even thought when I'm reading with somebody in group reading or one-to-one to actually time it. So I've never really thought about that information until we had Browzly. And actually, it's actually quite important information because it's telling you about their fluency, it's telling you about their speed, their accuracy, their fluency. So if all of that information within the Browzly app for you to access and use. And you know, we've been really digging into the data, because Casey and I are really interested in data, so we've really been digging into it. We've just been finding out these really interesting and slightly surprising things as well. So one of the surprising things for us was when I was actually watching Casey and Bhavna delivering training to the teachers, and I was in the background kind of supervising the training, because I wanted to understand how are the teachers understanding this information that they're getting. And what I saw is they were puzzled. They were pulling faces and looking at each other. They saw things like this, and they were like really puzzled. They were pulling faces at each other. And I'm thinking, there's a gap here. There's something they don't understand right now. And they're like, no, that learner absolutely knows that. So they were starting to see Browzly as a little bit of a hindrance. They were like, it's giving us data we don't want. It's telling us things we don't want to hear about our learners. But actually, when Casey sat down and picked that with them and explained to them that that's actually really helpful, because that's made us spot something that we didn't know about that learner from all of those assessments that we've been doing, from our formative assessment in the lesson, through our formative assessment through observation, through our summative assessment through Little Wonder. We didn't know this, but now we do, because Browzly's told us this. So then it's about digging into it. So you can actually play back and listen. So it's got a playback tool, and you can actually listen to exactly where the learner is going wrong. So even though you're not necessarily there when they're interacting with Browzly, you've got this playback. So you can actually understand what those kind of inconsistencies were. And maybe Browzly just recorded it and didn't pick up on something. And you hear it and you're like, no, definitely. They definitely just read the word to. I'm going to override it. So you can actually override the assessment if you feel confident to do so. If you don't feel confident and you're like, oh yeah, I'm really not quite sure, maybe they do or maybe they don't, then you can run the assessment again. Okay, or you can do some direct teaching. So it's picking out these little anomalies. Got it right today. I keep trying to pronounce the word anomalies for about a week. And it's picking out these little anomalies for us, and it's making us question. So we've stopped. I think what Browzly's done for us is it's stopped us taking data on face value, and it's actually making us triangulate and question data on a much deeper level. Okay, so is it telling us something new? That's now the question that Casey is asking her practitioners. Is it telling you something new? Is it telling you something that where a learner needs an intervention that you actually haven't spotted? And I think teachers don't like asking themselves this question. They like to think they've been getting it right. And it's been uncomfortable for them. I think that's probably been the most surprising and most uncomfortable thing that we've had to work through with our teachers. But now that they understand that data anomalies are actually a strength and a positive and something that we can work with for the betterment of our learners and our interventions for them. And it really pinpoints the struggle. So we've been able to really pinpoint the struggle through listening back and playing back and hearing what it is that's flagged that bright red that we don't like to see in our data. And like I said, the ability to overwrite and edit is really useful, because maybe they do know it and you can just overwrite. So that's a really useful tool within the app.
I think it's as well really important to point out that our intervention groups have stopped being as general. We've actually been able to really pinpoint our intervention groups, whether it's one-to-one or with a group, with our learners, that they can have more specific intervention, which is more targeted, more purposeful, just relying on the data alone here. Our data was used from Little Wandle, and it gave groups, general groups, whereas now we are pinpointing exact places where children need specific support, whether it's letter recognition or word recognition, whatever it is, we're able to really give that either one-to-one in the classroom or within groups. So it's been really helpful in terms of moving children on really quickly. Once they get that personalised support, they flourish really well. Just a little bit of inaction. So here's two of our learners in reception, two boys in my class that love this app, and they've asked it for a few times to access it, and they've actually quite enjoyed becoming very independent with it.
You're a star. Keep reading.
8, 6.
He takes it very seriously, by the way.
Let's move to the next stage.
I think it's also really important to recognise that this little boy came in with no English at the start of the year, and he is now a fluent reader as well. And things like this really are enjoyment for him, and he loves any reading that he can possibly do.
Wow.
So, just a little about us in general, about what we do, because I know the tech question will always be asked. Our day is full of hands-on learning. Here's a picture of our school dog as well, Arnie. He can be a reading dog, he is an emotional support dog, and he is just our school mascot sometimes. Our day, these are a lot of pictures of my class. We're outside as much as possible, whether it's in the heat or not. We are hands-on learning, we are independent, and they have a lot of autonomy over their day. Structured parts of phonics, very important, we must do them. With that, it's very active, it's very movement-based, it's very up and down, not sitting on chairs and desks at a table. So with that, Browzly is a supplemented, very short snippet period part of the day that we have. It is not a whole lesson for them, it is not a large part of their day, it is there to be used as part of provision, so they access it and they move on. As you can see, as part of the reading passage, a child used it for 2 minutes. At this point, it is a very short bit of our day that we're using technology, just because we are a very hands-on school, very inquiry-based, very learner-led. And I think that just shows that it can have a real impact within our school day, and technology has its place to make sure it is a very balanced approach as we move forward into this sort of new world that we're going into. We will leave it on here with some of our testimonials from our teachers that have trialled it and piloted the program with us for you to read. But it's been a really fun experience so far, and we're actually very much looking forward to continuing our journey with Browzly. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask us, or Bhavna would be happy as well.
I just have a quick question. Because it is on the iPad and it picks up sound, what about background noise?
That's
Yes.
a very good
Yes.
question. We've had to troubleshoot, so I'll let Casey answer that one for you.
There is a certain amount of noise that can be in the room at the time, however, it's better in a quiet space, so we were trying to find spaces that the children could use, and with the independence, it could be in a classroom. We have shared space, we actually have multiple spaces that we can use. So we were using our early years learning hub for a little while, and then the children started actually asking for it during play provision. So they were able to use the classroom outside. We have a tree house that they were using it in for a while. So they actually just pick it up and go. I think that's the benefit of having it on their iPad. It's very accessible, they can move into a quiet space.
And I think that's the benefit of our environment and the way we kind of work with our learners from this big right up to this big. They understand like how to regulate. So it's like they understand find yourself a quiet space, and they'll just go and find somewhere, and because there's different spaces within the environment, they actually know they need a quiet space with Browzly there, so they actually can regulate that and find it for themselves now. But in the beginning, definitely we were picking up some background noises and things like that.
Some of the teachers as well.
and the teachers prompted, we caught them.
A lot of teacher prompting.
Guilty, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you have a year gap where they stop using it? If they haven't finished the program, they can do it next year.
Okay.
You stop.
So we've started obviously using it with reception as a trial, but the plan is to then embed it into year one and obviously into other provision as well, maybe into our EAL provision and into our Thrive Centre, which is our Centre for More Complex Need Learners. So yeah, we do have bigger plans for the future and to embed this further. We've really enjoyed working with it. We've really enjoyed what it's taught us about ourselves, right, and about like our skills as teachers. It's really thrown up those gaps in ourselves, which has been a really, really helpful process for everybody.
How much time do you give the students on this platform?
So the teachers can allocate per learner because it's adaptive. Some learners may be on single words, some may be on sentences, some may be on passages. So it depends. But there are also, we know that there's demands of the day, things like you've got to go to lunch or snack or music or whatever it is. So there is a pause function. So they can pause it and come back to it later within that week. So it can be accessed for a couple words. We know that they sometimes get tired for our little learners. So they can pause and come back later that week and carry on the rest of their words and their learning. So it's very varied.
But we would never have them on it for a long period of time. And most of the activities are like a couple of minutes long. Yeah. I think it might be time for a break, but we're going to be around. Marvin's going to be at the Browzly stand. If you want to go and have a little trial, do you want to explain about the little competition today?
So you can come up to our stand and you can read to Browzly Bear yourself. So it will be an experience of how students experience it. So we've set up a little small passage, like a couple of sentences that you can read to Browzly, and it will give you an assessment of your reading. At the end of the day, whoever are the top 2 readers in terms of overall score, you can win a free subscription for your class for the whole year next year. Yes.
So, you just said it gives you reading passages as well.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that yes, so now we have words which are within context. But with regards to EL learners and learners who don't know the meanings of those words, does it throw up any meanings? Is there a facility there?
So first of all, it's fully decodable text. So the graphemes that you're teaching, the passages appear in that same order. So usually the words that are being used are the words that you would normally practice. So it's a simple vocabulary, but we do not really have a way where they would click on the word and explain to them the meaning yet. That doesn't happen. But all the vocabulary is within the context of the grapheme that is being taught. So it's fully decodable text. And it's pretty accessible vocabulary, but I think the vocabulary feature as such is not there.
So I'm just thinking from an EL point of view, does it give a lot of visuals with the vocabulary? Does it give some visuals through?
No, there are no visuals. So actually that is one of the strip factor that Emma can talk about.
Yeah, so one of the things that we found is that often what learners tend to then rely on is those visuals. And I know from an EAL perspective that's really helpful, but from a reading assessment perspective that's actually really unhelpful. So from a vocabulary teaching perspective that's really, really helpful. But for accurate reading assessment it's actually not, and that's not what, sorry, I'm really sorry.
I think we should get you some
When it
books.
comes up with the words afterwards as well, you can have those sort of discussions afterwards as well with why they got it wrong. Maybe they don't understand what the word is, or as they've decoded it, it might be one of those things that could be that discussion afterwards.
But it's not an assessment of EAL language, it's not an assessment of language development, it's very much an assessment of reading. So it's assessing those reading skills. So yeah, so the strict backness of it is actually a benefit because there's zero prompting. There's zero prompting for them. So it's very much a reading tool, not a language teaching tool in that way.
I hope it was helpful, and please do visit the stall and have a